You check the news, it's all bad. The economy, a mess. Climate, on fire. Your bank account, also on fire, but like in a sad way. And suddenly you're buying $60 worth of weird snacks and a micro hobby kit you'll never use. Sound familiar? You, my friend, might be doom spending. So this has been getting a lot of coverage lately, and I have noticed that all of my friends are in the undertows of it as well. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit. Doom spending is on the rise for Gen Z and millennials. Today we're breaking down why we do it, how companies make it worse, and most importantly, how to fight back without feeling deprived. Hey there, I'm Paige and this is Nerdonomic, where we have geeky talks about money. Let's start off today by talking about what doom spending is. Honestly, it's not that complicated. Doom spending is stress shopping when the world feels like a dumpster fire. It's like doom scrolling, except you're going buy it now instead of just scrolling past. So let's say you're buying yourself little treats just to feel something. That gadget recommended on TikTok, upping your skincare routine, or some funky sodas that you've never tried before. That's doom spending. Or maybe you're panic buying things for an imagined better version of yourself. I'm really guilty of this. So that would be journals, expensive planners, fancy kitchen gear you're never gonna use. Oh, that's really the key here, is that with doom spending, it's unrealistic. I have some kitchen gear I just bought. If you use the kitchen gear, it's not doom spending, especially if it saves you money in the long term. Or it could be subscriptions that feel like self-care, but they quietly drain your bank account. I actually have this one friend. So, okay, this is not sponsored. A full disclaimer, I've used learning platforms. I'm not gonna mention any names here, but I have a learning platform that I've used that I like very much. And for me, it's been totally worth it. I have another friend that basically subscribes to all of the learning platforms with the intention that she's going to learn. She's going to use it for continuing education. It's been like 5 or 6 years now. She's on 4 different learning platforms and she's always just about to use them. She never does. It's actually kind of a running joke at this point. I also have another friend who does a bunch of different beauty boxes. She doesn't really use them. She has a bunch of expired beauty samples. That's the kind of thing we're talking about, just the impulse to kind of feel a little something. Okay, so why do we doom spend? Well, there's a whole different brain science going on with treat yourself. Basically, when life feels uncertain, our brains crave small wins, little hints of dopamine, right? And what's neat and sort of scary and dangerous is that spending money provides a dopamine hit. You're a hunter-gatherer. You can basically simulate a hunting expedition where you go out and you get the beast and you bring it back to your tribe and you're providing. And credit cards make it a lot easier to kind of have funny money and funky math. So it's like, oh, you don't even have to leave your house. You don't have to spend real money. You can just gather, hunt without, having to risk or do anything and get those dopamine hits. That's the first layer. The next layer is something I call the might as well mentality. So there's a really good tweet. I'm gonna see if I can find it and put it in the video, but it basically says, I'm waiting to see if the world ends before I get my shit together. But essentially, with the might as well mentality, if everything is bad, why not just buy something fun? Like, if the world is ending, why can't I have a little fun before it does? And spoiler, because capitalism wins. So that kind of leads me to the next element psychologically, and that is the illusion of control. So like I was talking about with the first bit, with the hunter-gatherer bit, basically buying stuff feels like taking action when everything else feels out of control. So you're this effective hunter, you're giving yourself efficacy, you're giving yourself control over something. Even if your spending is out of control, you at least feel in control in a way that's very primal and satisfying to our brains. And finally, I think the other big element here is social media and FOMO. So if you're not familiar with FOMO, it's the fear of missing out. It's a kind of envy that's fear-based. You see other people have things, you want them. You feel left out. And with social media, we are bombarded with the best curated versions of other people's lives. So we're seeing a highlight reel of people's best days, and we want those as well, in a way that's highly unnatural, to be honest. It's something that we've had to deal with and reckon with the last decade or so. Also, the algorithms kind of play into that. Algorithms know what we're watching on YouTube, what our friends are doing even, and they will show you the thing you didn't know you needed right when you're feeling vulnerable, when you're feeling that FOMO. It is a perfect storm. And it doesn't help that companies exploit the doom spending phenomenon. There's a whole bunch of marketing psychology in action, stuff that can be kind of subtle until you start looking for it. So I challenge you after you watch this video to look for it in the wild, and you will see it. Once you start looking for it, it is everywhere. Basically, you will see advertising that promotes little treat culture and encourages impulse spending as self-care. It does it in a variety of different ways. There are also a whole genre of ads that are "you deserve this" ads, and they weaponize burnout and that feeling of emptiness and running on fumes, like, oh, you deserve this to treat your burnout. And in addition, there's a whole bunch of fear-based marketing that is taking advantage of actual economic chaos and distress in the US. So you'll see messages like, buy this now before the economy collapses, disguised in various more palatable packaging. And this has all only gotten worse in the age of AI, because targeting has gotten smarter and more granular. So the second you're stressed posting about your life falling apart, the algorithm shows you emotional support water bottles, or whatever they've intelligently guessed will foster a sense of control and security in troubling times. All right, so that's the problem. Let's talk about what to do about it. How can we fight doom spending without sucking all the joy out of life? I got you. All right, so one way to combat doom spending is to unlink the impulse with the actual purchasing decision. So there's a couple ways to make decisions. When we're talking about cognitive processes, there's hot cognition and cold cognition. A hot cognitive process is when you're in the moment, you're feeling emotional. You're more decisive, you're more confident, and you're more likely to surrender to an impulse due to emotional reasons and just a negative feeling in the moment. So a hot cognitive process is yelling at somebody when you're angry, or buying something because you're stressed out. That is more of a hot cognitive process, where a cold cognitive process is when you sort of reason through with your frontal lobe and you feel otherwise calm and you're future oriented. Here's a good example. Think about it this way. If you're using a hot cognitive process, you're grocery shopping when hungry, you're looking around on what seems good, and you spend more, you have more food waste if you do that than if you sit down when you're not hungry and you meal plan. When you're calm at home, you come up with a plan for yourself for the store. That's important. So one way to do this in areas that aren't food-based spending is to put a waiting period. There are all different kinds that work. I often, when I am in extreme frugal mode, will do like a 30-day waiting period on something I want. I will wait and see if I want it in 30 days, and if I still want it, I can get it. I know that's a lot for some people. I have a friend who does a week as a standard course. She'll wait a week, she'll put something on her calendar and check back up. And the nice thing is if she forgets to put it on her calendar, she forgets that she even wants it. That happens a lot. But even my most impulse-driven friends tend to work really well with the 48-hour rule. So if you've never worked with a rule before and you want to start slow and kind of detox from some pretty aggressive doom spending, wait 48 hours before you buy anything you want. If you still want it in 2 days, it's probably not doom spending. Another thing you can do is actually budget for joy. Budgets get really a bad rap. A lot of people hate budgeting. They don't want to come up with a budget. It's a bunch of rules, blah. But you don't have to just put your rent, your utilities, your groceries on a budget. Like, if you're doing budgeting right, you should have a line item, however small, that's for fun. Maybe it's only $5 a month. Maybe it's $100 a month. It really depends. Maybe you have tons of money and you're doing well on investments and you can do $1,000 a month. Everybody's at a different place and we are all in different places at different times. I'm on a very low fun budget at the moment because I just bought a house and getting a bunch of tools to repair things around the house. So for me, nearly all of my fun budget is going into that household fund for home improvement, and that's fine. But there is a fun budget. And you should give yourself a monthly fun budget, even if it's only $5 on stuff that you can buy without guilt. A good example of something I did, I had a $5 fun budget a couple months ago. I was being very aggressive. I bought 2 bath bombs. It came out to $5 and I had 2 luxurious bubble baths that month. And that was my fun budget. The next thing to look at is to replace the dopamine hit somehow. This is one that I do all the time and it makes this all sustainable. What you want to do is you want to find free or cheap alternatives to stuff you can acquire or achieve that give you that dopamine hit. So one thing I do is I use my public library. I have a Kindle, I use ebooks. I am able to take out lots and lots of library books through my public library. My library actually has an exchange program with a bunch of other county libraries and other libraries in the state, so that I've got multiple library cards for online books. I can take out a lot of books for free. I know some people like audiobooks better. My library also has that. My library has a library of things, which means that you can take out various items, and as long as you clean them yourself afterwards, there's no charge. If they've got to clean it, it's like $5. Obviously you don't damage anything, but they have a bunch of cake molds and things. So if you have a party for a kid and you want to bake a Darth Vader cake, that's actually something I saw in there. You can make a Darth Vader cake and you get that dopamine hit, and then when you're done, you clean it and you bring it back to the library. So there are lots of cool things like that at the library where you borrow it and you bring it back. There are also Buy Nothing groups. If you put in the name of your community on Facebook with Buy Nothing next to it, you will find groups where people will basically be giving stuff away for free. You can do that as well if you have other stuff. Sometimes it actually costs money to dispose of things. Like, not only is it bad for the environment to be throwing extra stuff in landfills, but somebody will come in their car and pick it up if you've got old furniture. Like for us, the seller left some furniture we didn't want here. Some of it we wanted and some of it we didn't. We were able to give it to a family that needed it. A few of the pieces that just weren't gonna work for us. And something like the Humble Bundle, that's a great program. Basically, you donate however much you can. A lot of them start at $1 for a whole bunch of Steam games. I've done that a bunch. I have a huge Steam library. I know there's some other competing bundles for video games. I don't have that as top of mind. I have a good friend who's really good at the free or cheap games online where you can do that, and they send me alerts when stuff I like is going on sale, or when there's a new bundle coming out that looks like it would be for me. So I think that's the other thing, is to make sure you share knowledge with people in your circle. For example, I have a good friend who is good at the local CSA, the produce things from the local farms. She gave me a whole bunch of education on how to navigate that. I had other friends who understood the farmers markets. I was able to talk to about the good farmers markets in my area. They're all different ways to spend less strategically, do cheap or free, and to share that knowledge as a community. So I really recommend that, rather than just going right to the e-retailer and bloop, bloop, just like look around for free and cheap alternatives. And I'll tell you, it can be really fun hunting for Buy Nothing groups, libraries. It takes the place of that. It reduces the cost, and it's actually really fun. And finally, another big thing is to recognize the emotional triggers. When you start feeling anxious or stressed about the world, name it. Admit it to yourself. Instead of trying to quash it or drown it out with the dopamine, take a second and acknowledge what you're feeling, and then find a healthier way to use that energy. Are you shopping because you're anxious? Are you mad at capitalism? Are you exhausted? Sometimes just naming it can help. You don't have to feel bad about doom spending. Your brain is literally just trying to cope. It's not a crime, but recognizing what's going on gives you the power back. If we can't stop late-stage capitalism, at least we can stop letting it scam us out of our rent money. Anyway, it's been great talking to you as always. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.